want to. You don't gotta do it if you don't want to. You don't gotta do it if you don't want to. It's just a suggestion. Come on.
Again? Here we go. All right. Hey, cheers.
At some point, you're going to stop being surprised that we're coming back.
Well, I'm still trying to take it all in. It's still new.
It's still new.
It's still new.
It's still new. We're still figuring it out.
Yeah.
We haven't made any dramatic changes to our setup.
No, not yet.
Since maybe your stuff over here.
Yeah, but I'm kind of hoping something doesn't fall down behind us today, because
I'm kind of hoping it does.
there was one or two pieces that were barely clinging to the wall.
So drinking game. Anytime one of Psych's things falls off, that's a shot. Prepare yourself.
And there's plenty of opportunities for that to happen, I suppose. So
nothing on my end.
Well, welcome back to the conversation. As always, I'm Psych. Joining me today is Letter K, and we're going to continue our conversation on workplace relationships, how people intermingle, how you intertwine with your supervisors, your employers, your bosses, the owners, and your coworkers, colleagues, and cohorts. That's a lot.
Yeah,
There's a lot going on.
We've put quite a meaty bite into this, I think.
I've learned a lot already. I had no idea 65 million people leave their jobs every year. That just seems just like a large number.
I wouldn't mind diving deeper into that to see how many people leave their job at Taco Bell and end up at Wendy's, or leave their job at Forever 21 and end up at Kohl's.
I had a similar question. I was thinking about how many people are leaving jobs or forced to leave their jobs and then are later rehired at the same place.
Yeah, but your statistics talked about layoffs.
Yes.
So that would fall in that category.
Yes, potentially. But not everybody laid off is able to return to their current or their previous job, rather.
No, and I mean, layoffs are their own dark part of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
But
I also know people that are outright fired, that have been outright fired from a place of employment, only to be rehired by the same owner that fired them to begin with. That's interesting.
That's very interesting. I don't know that one, I've ever encountered anything quite like that, and two, I don't know that if I was fired from a place and invited back, I'd really need that job. Like, I would need that job to be like, yeah, water under the bridge. Mm-hmm. You told me to pound sand, but you're welcoming me back.
Yes, it would take a great amount of forgiveness and maturity, and to be able to completely put something in your past and leave it there, to re-enter that environment and continue on as you once did. I know we've seen it on, well, at least I have. I don't know how many of these stories are factual, but there's been documented cases in the restaurant industry where a cook or a chef is fired, and then the restaurant is unable to find somebody fast enough or quick enough, or find somebody better, or at least of that quality that particular chef or line cook possessed. If they had an executive chef or a head chef that was phenomenal but difficult to work with, and the owner is like, all right, you're out of here, that's it. But then later, it's been on a lot of Gordon Ramsay's shows are riddled with employees just like that, where they left, they were asked to leave, and they got their final check cut, and then a month later, they're right back there, and several times, almost like a revolving door.
Well, it's like with any kind of employment. It's like actors. You have these actors who are notoriously difficult to work with, but they keep getting jobs because they keep selling tickets. I mean, if you've got a guy or a gal who makes the food, who's doing something that draws people in, but you can't get along with him, or your personalities clash, how much money needs to be available to where that money talks. And it's like, well, shoot, I need him. I need him, and I fired him because I hate his face, but I need him back.
Yeah. Or at least the perception of need. I mean, I know, and I don't believe this. I don't believe that anybody is indispensable for the most part. I think everybody can be replaced. I think everybody is disposable in some way, shape, or form. That's where it's called HR, human resources, for a reason, right? When this resource is no longer profitable, if they're no longer working, if they're not providing results, then yeah, we can easily part ways and move on to the next. I suppose it works much better in larger organizations than it does in smaller outfits. If you have a mom and pop place, if you got a family restaurant, and interestingly enough, the person that I knew that was fired and then later rehired by the same owner I worked alongside with, and it was in a restaurant. So the kind of what I'm watching now on reality television shows, so to speak, that are based in restaurants and trying to restore restaurants that are struggling. I know it's isolated to that particular industry, but it seems there's some truth to it.
So I only know one person who is a chef, a boogeyman, and then our friend and my longtime bandmate, bass player, also spent time in restaurants, and they both talk about the difficulty, like the high stress environment of being in the kitchen. So I think that there's merit to that. Honestly, obviously Gordon Ramsay kicks it up a notch.
Yeah, he definitely brings added stress to those interactions.
Yes, and
it's elevated
by design, because we like drama. We're human beings. We suck it up. But yeah, no, I think that it's a difficult environment because it's fast, it's time based, it's got a lot of moving parts. Things have to be well oiled, and if you have somebody who's not getting along with everybody else, that can cause problems. So I could totally see tensions flaring, heat rising, and being like, you know what, fuck, you're fired. Just get out, leave, you're fired. And then remorse later would be like, oh, that guy was kind of a tool, but he was an integral part to this organization. I'm going to have to reassess my termination of that particular employee.
Sure. I think a little bit of time to think, a little bit of time to calm down.
But it also goes to say, it's fuel for the argument that having a cohesive team is paramount to at least the perception of things going well, of either profitability or having an organization that works well and is productive, because we're talking about firing somebody over personalities, not over skill, over personalities.
Yes, they were obviously hired because they were capable and competent. They weren't asked to stay because there was conflict.
And then they were invited back because they were skilled and competent.
And everyone calmed down, and the emotions had a chance to settle, and rational thought was reintroduced to the situation. And
I've always said, and I may have said it last episode, that I would rather have a decent team of people who get along than have a team of the best, but everybody's impossible to work with. You're going to get more out of a 6-member team that gets along and is pretty good at what they do than you are going to have 3 guys who are just the Olympic winners of their particular employment endeavors, and then 3 other guys who are good or decent or whatever. You're going to get more out of an average team if they get along.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I mentioned it last episode, but I was definitely thinking of it in that same vein with the military and special operations, special forces. They usually invite candidates to meet with the entire existing team and get to know that team, and they spend time together, they work on small tasks, they might have, a smaller missions, and then the whole team that is currently established gets to make the decision whether or not to include somebody else into their fold or not.
Vote them onto the island.
Correct. Yes. And it stands to reason that if it were 50-50, right, then introducing that new person wouldn't work as well as if everybody were on board.
That's an interesting dynamic, because if you think about it from that, so people get hired by managers, by supervision, by a small group of people who are in the bureaucratic stratosphere of their organization. Very rarely do we include the employees in that decision. It's interesting to think that if we test ran people to see how they would work with the other people within a group or a team, if that would have a positive effect on overall job term expectancy, productivity, and happiness in the workplace.
So I think it absolutely would, and I think I've been through an interview process in the past that was similar to kind of what you were just describing. At the day program that I used to work at, I would go in for a traditional interview. There was one of the owners was there, one of the supervisors from the management team was there, and they interviewed me, and it was informal. I wasn't receiving the exact same treatment as the previous candidate because conversation can meander and different things and topics can arise, and they had the ability to explore them. After that, it went well enough where we went into phase 2, where I was invited to join a class. And after I spent about a half day with a class that they were running, that they were teaching, run by employees that they were currently working there, and students, adult students who were taking that particular course, they would then go back and interview them and ask them what sense they got about me. What were their thoughts? What were their first impressions?
That's a process.
Is that somebody that you could see working here? Is that somebody that you could see taking a class from? Is this somebody you want to work alongside? And I thought that was the first time I had been to an interview quite like that. And ever since then, I thought it was nuanced. I thought it was outside the box thinking, and it's a shame that more interviews are not run that way.
I like being a part of the interview process. So I'm an entry level, I lead a small team. I'm an entry level manager. I like being a part of the interview process because I interact with the guys on my team, and I can gauge whether or not a potential interviewer or interviewee, the person being interviewed, I can gauge whether or not they're going to be a good fit personality-wise by asking a few key nuanced questions. And it's kind of talking to them, getting a feel. I've been in the same situation where people in my position were not a part of the interview process, and it's like a crapshoot, because these people above us, they're just getting quarterly reports from whoever the technical lead is. They're in some cases, they don't even know what we do. They know we produce a product, but they don't know the day-to-day. They don't know how we get from A to Z. They don't know any of those things. And then they go out with this lack of intimate knowledge of our organization's process and even the way that we need to operate in order to function, the technology of it, say. And then they just give us somebody. And it's a crapshoot.
Because you just need a body.
Because you need a body. And I've encountered that where it's like, well, you needed a body. Here, this person met our 10 criteria. They answered these questions in such a way that we think that they're going to be a perfect fit for you. And it's like you get them in there, they don't even know what we do. Like, oh, well, they had experience with installing home camera systems. That's kind of like AV, right? Yeah.
No, not exactly.
Not exactly. But I think that adding people as close to the ground floor as possible, especially with a small team, especially with a small group, I think that there's a definite benefit to that. And it's interesting that the government does that.
So I was having a conversation with one of my administrators this past week because we have a couple of openings and they've gone unfilled. And they used to hold the interviews on our site, which I was available to go and sit down and actually see the person, hear their responses firsthand. Now they've moved the interviews to the district office, and I'm no longer able to see who I might potentially be getting next. But the one thing I don't like about some of the more government bureaucratic style of interviewing, the process is exactly the same for everybody. We get a sheet of questions.
Equal opportunity employment.
We can only ask the questions that are on there. We cannot explain what the questions mean. We can't clarify. But we can only reread the question. I'm not joking. So
I'm sorry. You're in a dark forest. There is a tree to the left of you that is a different color than the other trees in the forest. You walk towards the tree. It attacks you. How do you respond?
And no clarifying questions are allowed, because in the past, people would report that, sometimes candidates talk.
Of course.
Sometimes you already know people that have been through the interview process. And if they find that there is a discrepancy or one person received different treatment than the next, and if they didn't receive the position, if they weren't offered a position, then they would have a valid complaint.
They can claim that they received a disadvantaged position in their interview process.
But limiting the interviewers to 8 questions on a sheet
that they didn't help decide, right?
That they were not a part of crafting or putting into play at all, or they weren't. This came from a committee in HR that decided that these were the most valuable questions to provide us the most successful candidates that were going to be the most valuable, give us the best results and the best outcomes to us, and we can only read those. And even if they say something profound in their response, we are not allowed to ask a follow-up question. We're not allowed to have them expand on that at all. I do not prefer those types of interviews. Anyway, I was having this conversation with my administrator about my dislike of the process and how I would prefer it to be different. And she mentioned, well, you know what, we like to stay out of court, and we don't like getting sued.
Yeah, that's a lazy answer.
And I was like, well, you know what else can get us sued? Hiring the wrong individual that acts in a manner that is not appropriate for a public school setting, right? That can also get you sued as well. And anyway, what we're finding is there's just way too much turnover. We get somebody and then they're gone, and we get somebody and then they're gone. And it might just be the position. It's not a career, and they might have had a more attractive offer, and so they chose to end their current employment to pursue something else, and I can respect that. But if we're finding that too many people are leaving because it just was not the right fit, and we could have learned that much sooner, then we're doing everybody a disservice.
Yeah. Retention is a big issue. In my work, it's a big issue too. Like they put a lot of thought and time into how do we continue to retain people. And the interview process for my work, it's kind of like what you go through, but we don't have a set number of questions. You
don't have a sheet of paper in front of you?
So what we do is we work with HR to define the scope of the position, and they determine like 8 key factors, and they write them out. So then we as interviewers are supposed to ask questions and have a conversation with the person being interviewed that prompts them to answer in a way that we can score them on these 8 key points. So it's a little bit more open-ended, but at the same time, I could ask them something that's way over here and has nothing to do with these 8 key points, and it becomes irrelevant.
Well, if we get the interview process wrong, that's definitely adding to what the 65 million people that are looking for new jobs every year.
Well, maybe a majority of them, but how many jobs in this country are like, you got a pair of hands? You can wear a paper hat? Come on, you're in.
Yes, and those jobs do exist, like dirty jobs with micro, right?
Well, no, I meant more like base service, not like difficult jobs that are.
But there are those difficult blue collar jobs that
Yeah.
pay well, that go unfilled, that are
Yeah.
just continually battling a lack of interest in their
Yeah.
or lack of knowledge about their particular field. But that's besides the point.
So you've been hired.
You've been hired.
You've been hired way more times than I have.
Oh yes.
So my question now is, so of all the jobs you've had in your life, how many of those jobs have you left versus how many jobs have you been invited to leave?
Invited to leave. So actually, I reported last time I had a dozen jobs, which when we searched what was the average amount of jobs that an adult will have in their lifetime, and it was a dozen. It was 12. It was 12. After that episode, I remembered 3 more jobs that I had had. So I'm up to 15 now.
Up to 15.
But maybe some of them were repressed memories, maybe. I had a couple jobs working for a couple charter schools as a private vendor, teaching courses to elementary school students. And then I worked for a screening, tutoring, and an assessment company.
So have you ever been fired from a job?
I have once.
Some time ago, I imagine.
It was my very first job as
Oh wow! So one and done.
It was my very first job. Well, I was a minor working as a paper boy.
Okay.
That's the only job that I
Oh,
have.
that doesn't. I
I
mean,
have
that is
been
pretty bad. But you have truancy issues that just.
I do.
That just streak down the vein of your
I do.
existence.
In fact, when I was working for my second job, my first job as an adult was with FedEx, and the job was probably 45 minutes from a good 45 minutes from my house.
That's a good drive especially for a young person with a low-paying job.
Yes, and it was. I think the job started at 5 a.m. or 5:30, and so first real job. You know me, I have time management issues.
You're a morning person as long as morning starts at noon.
And I am not a morning person. So it was an extremely difficult task.
It's a long ways away. What prompted you to accept a job so far away for something so rudimentary? And I imagine you were not running the FedEx.
No. But I probably could have, because I've seen how FedEx operates.
Okay. Calm down. And so have I.
Anyway, to answer, to elaborate a little bit more, I did have run-ins with the supervisor about, clocking in
Truancy.
2 minutes late or this or that. And
2 minutes late. You're being very nice to yourself.
Well, okay, let's say within 10 minutes.
Okay.
Within 10 minutes. Okay. Not too bad.
Not too bad.
When the trucks arrive and you need to unload trucks and scan things and drivers need to take off, like it's a well-oiled machine, and if you're not doing your part, then it hurts everyone. And it wasn't just, clocking in wasn't just like scanning something or punching a card. It was, you had to pick up one of the FedEx trackers, their electronic trackers, and you had to punch in everything into it and then scan it. And if they weren't charged, like it was a little bit more involved. It was a more involved process to clock in. It wasn't easy. It could easily take 2 minutes just to clock in if the tracker wasn't ready and if you could punch in a number wrong or something like that. Be that as it may, there was one individual who was responsible for all of the stuff going to the Army depot, which is kind of a big deal. Usually those crates and boxes and packages and those shipments were priority. And they were heavy too, because there was, who knows what was in there.
Who knows? Property of the U.S. government.
Yes. And anyway, that gentleman left. He had, which is what our episode's about, leaving. What happens when you leave? He left me.
That guy.
And yeah, left me just like that guy in Jurassic Park. He loved us. So I'm there working on the other side of this big conveyor belt sorting packages. And they're like, hey, you need to get over there and do that job. And continue doing your job too, which was a task because we had to memorize all these zip codes and we had to know which side of the belt to put things on so that the drivers down the line could pull from their things from the right side of the belt. Plus pull off all the Army Depot stuff so that it can go to its truck. So I'm doing the work of 2 individuals. And they never hired somebody, or at least when I was there, they didn't hire somebody to replace this guy that had left. They just continually asked me to do the job of 2 people. And I did it. And I did it well. And no complaints about my performance at all while I was present and doing the job.
Yeah.
But if I was 300 seconds late to work that day, of course the supervisor had to confront me and say something, but then he would then turn around and go ask me to do the work of 2 people. Yeah. And so they lived with my tardiness because they knew I was saving the money in the end, ultimately, and doing a fabulous job.
It's funny that, so they did you a disservice by
They did.
by totally allowing you to be perpetually late, simply because you were good at your job.
Yes.
But
Not just good at my job, I was good at 2 people's jobs.
yeah, great. But it's funny that they felt the need to continuously engage in what is essentially progressive discipline while never really intending to follow through on it. Maybe they thought, you know what, if this guy starts to slack off, we're gonna need the fodder to fire him.
Sure.
But so I have left every job I don't currently have. I've quit every single job, every single one. Never been fired. I'm amazing. I show up on time, do great work.
And I'm the same, with the exception of my paperboy escapades.
Yeah. Yes, and it sounds like you're even a better employee than I ever have been, because they're willing to tolerate your just complete disregard for the human decent concept of showing up on time. But so now the question is, you have decided to leave your job. You found something better, or you can't take it anymore.
I felt that way many times.
Yeah, me as well. So let's start with anger. You get so welled up with frustration at your job or your supervision or your coworkers. You just hate being there, and you're like, you know what? Fuck this job. I'm out. What do you do to that? You just say, you know what? Fuck this job. I'm out. Or do you have enough wherewithal and forethought to take a deep breath, calm down, and do things in a way where you're not burning that bridge?
Yes, the latter is true of me, in my experiences. I've always left a job not for reasons of dissatisfaction or unhappiness or being unhappy or being discontent. All of the positions I've left have been a result of me running towards something better, not escaping something terrible.
I have left many positions because of dissatisfaction. In fact, I can think of 3 jobs where I left without having prospects because I was so dissatisfied. But I always, and I think this is important. This is a good thing to put out there. When I left the job, I always gave them notice. And I usually wrote a letter of resignation, explaining myself. That was very, very important to me. Even if I was disgruntled or dissatisfied, I tried to put into words that were digestible and that were not fueled by anger into something writing and hand it to whoever was the person that was going to be managing my dismissal. I always do that, and I'm a very strong advocate for that because I had a job as a security guard, and I did that job for a couple of years. It wasn't terrible, but the company started to kind of go to a place where I didn't want to be a part of it anymore, and it was time. It's not a career. standing in front of malls. But I wrote a letter, and when I left after 2 weeks, we shook hands and everything was cool. And the reason why that's important, I never went back to security, but I was going from that to, something else that also was very entry level. And who knows how that was going to work out. But I knew, and my boss said, hey, if you ever want to come back, just let us know, give us a call. Because I left on good terms. I had written the letter telling them the things I didn't like, the reason I was leaving, but I still got the invite to come back. Whereas I could have just left my radio at a job site and just been like, fuck you, I'm out.
Yeah, you could have.
And that would have not received an invitation to return.
No, it wouldn't have. I have a video that's kind of in this vein that might be interesting. Good old Veronica. Love Veronica.
Veronica is a character in a stick figure cartoon. If you've never seen her, hilarious, by the way.
This one has 4.6 billion on TikTok. Yeah, let's have a peek at this one.
Hey Veronica, do you have a second? Yeah. I received.
Oh no.
Oh, Veronica.
There we go. Let's go
Hey
back.
Veronica, do you have a second? Yeah. I received your resignation? Yes, I also left a copy on your desk for your records. But it's effective immediately? I really would prefer a 2-week notice. Yes, I start my new job effective immediately, so today's actually my last day. I'm gonna have to ask you to give a full 2 weeks. What happens if I don't give a full 2 weeks? It would make you ineligible for rehire. With all due respect, Janet, I would rather sell my ass on OBT than to get rehired. So I'm really not worried about getting rehired. Veronica, giving us a 2-week notice, it really helps us out with being able to find your replacement. Didn't you just let Amy go last week, effective immediately? It not giving her time to go find a new job the same way you're asking for 2 weeks to find a new employee? It just seems like it's more for your benefit than for ours. Hey, Veronica, do you have a second?
So, yes, that brings up some very valid points. Your employer could fire you at the drop of a hat. Mm-hmm. So do you need to give 2 weeks notice? And now we're at the point where some places want a month. Mm-hmm. No, you do not. However, just to play devil's advocate, because I do believe that Veronica has a point. I really do. Because if you're not going back to that job, if you dropped dead in your seat, they would replace you in a heartbeat. They'd be like, oh, so sorry, she died. Yep. And they would replace you in a heartbeat. So you shouldn't feel, I don't think you should feel overly attached to people who are mistreating you or don't make you feel like you're a part of a team or a family. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously what's going on with your stick figure cartoon.
Yes.
But to my point, not burning those bridges, there's places where you get up into certain industries and certain positions and certain places where you're no longer, it's not like a fast food joint or working in something that is just entry level and not a career. It's a job.
Yes.
Say you're getting a job. Say you're working in a medical office, like a dentist office or something, or you're doing something in technology, something in service, like in repair. Like you're a PLC technician or something, and you burn that bridge. So I know a guy who worked in a very niche tech service. He was a repair technician, and he burned his bridge with his employer. When he tried to find that job with other people who need the same kind of person, they had already heard about what he'd done. Mm-hmm. And what had happened, and because your industry is narrow, it's small.
Yes.
So what happened was, it got to the point to where he could not find work in the region.
Yeah, he was blacklisted.
The Western region, and he had to accept a job in Pennsylvania in order to find work in the same thing he did. And so it's against the law, the way that he was treated, because you're not allowed to
Yes.
you're not allowed. However,
It happens.
it absolutely happens. So, yes, if you've got a job that you're never going to go back to, and it's in a field that isn't something you're going to continue to work in, and you have another job or a better job or something that's, I think that's great. Go live your life like you live for you, do yourself. They're going to find somebody else. If you get into more niche positions in technology or in services that require specific skill sets, say Veronica found a better job that's lateral, pays better, but it's in the same kind of office management position that she's obviously doing in there, whatever. And they find out where she goes to work and calls her up, hey, you know what? Veronica kind of sucks. They can throw you under the bus, and then suddenly you're under probation of this new company, and you find yourself not making probation because you did not amicably separate yourself from your previous employer.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for
Yeah,
that.
you bring up an excellent point. Resignation letters are valuable. They serve their purpose. In almost every position that I have left, I've written and furnished my previous employer or about to be former employer with a letter of resignation. And it doesn't have to be extravagant. It doesn't have to be wordy. 1 page, maybe a half sheet is all that is required, but that can definitely help save your future if you leave them with that and you provide them appropriate notice. Even if someone is dissatisfied, even if you're unhappy, even if you think you're not going to make it one more day there, which I was kind of thinking about, how do we measure happiness? How do we measure job satisfaction? Everything I found kind of made sense, but what do you think? How do you measure your own happiness? How do you measure letter K's happiness?
I ask letter K most mornings, hey bro, how you doing? Is you happy today?
Do you have a mirror for that app?
No, I can do it in my mind.
Just very introspective, just a daily check-in.
Yeah, it's just
You're taking in personal inventory of your emotions.
I don't know that I'm the happiest person on the planet, but I'm content. I know that I've got it better than a lot of people, and that gives me kind of like a calming solace. But no, I don't think of things in terms of, am I happy now? What do I need to do to be happy? Because happiness is a fleeting concept to me.
Sure. Yeah, you're not always happy. When it comes to job performance and one's job satisfaction, basically everything is self-reported. The individual gets to share how they are feeling. The individual is sharing what their current state is. Whatever they perceive is what's accepted. So when it comes to job satisfaction surveys, interviews, focus groups, observations, performance metrics, employee turnover and retention, that's one of the more objective of these measurements here.
So I can tell you that in terms of employment satisfaction and happiness, I determine that based on whether or not I want to go to work. I want to go to work now. I love my job. It's freaking awesome. Mm-hmm. But there were days in groceries where I didn't want to go to work. I had good days and bad days. I mean, I'm perpetually happy with going to work now. So I think that that's a very good personal barometer. If you wake up and you find yourself trying to think of excuses for calling in sick, you need to assess why you're unhappy, why you don't want to go to work. Is it job satisfaction? Is it the people you work with? Is it something specific? But I know a lot of people do that. They wake up thinking, I don't want to go to work today. I'm not sick. Mm-hmm. Perfectly fine. I'm healthy. I can use my perfectly good health right now to go do something I'd rather be doing. Why is that? And then you can start to make a self-assessment about why or what you can do to find better workplace satisfaction. Is it a new job? Is it a different career? Is it a change? I mean, what was the reason for that?
I work with quite a few people who don't necessarily want to be there and wouldn't if they were allowed.
Didn't need the money.
If they had more sick time, they would blow right through it. If they had more vacation, they would use it. And I've had some conversations. Some of these people are quite a bit younger than I am. And I just kind of wanted to poll them and assess where their frame of mind is and what are they currently processing to determine why they feel that way, determine what they think about their current position and where they would rather be and how they're spending their time and how they're trading their time for money and their thoughts about life in general and how they're kind of going through this cycle and they feel like they can't get off. And I've been attempting to impart to people that are 10, 15, maybe even 20 years my junior, they can change their life if they don't like their current one. They have options, they have time, they have opportunities, they can make their situation different if they so choose. Some of the people I've offered that to, they haven't necessarily outright rejected it, but they didn't see a way out.
So I find that a lot of people complain for the sake of complaint, but when you offer them opportunities to break free from what they're complaining about, they feel stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So I do the same thing that you do. I meet with my guys regularly, and I take it one step further. I ask them what they want out of life, career, and if it's not something that we're currently doing, that's fine. Do better, be better, pursue that. But I also tell them this, and I think this is poignant. While you're here, even if you don't want to be here, there are things you can learn, opportunities that are presenting themselves inside the environment that you're currently in. Find and take those opportunities, learn and grow. If you want to be in politics and you want to go to school and get a communications master's or something, and we're in technology, we're installing TVs for a living. That's fine, but there are ways that you can gain valuable knowledge and experience that will help you in that career path that you're pursuing in every job that you're currently doing. Mm-hmm. So don't just feel like, oh man, I need to get out of here. Find the opportunities in the job that you currently have and determine how that job, whether you like it or not, can help you, stepping stones to what you eventually want to do. Mm-hmm. And I get a lot of positive response from that. I'm like, I hate this. I hate hanging TVs, but I like talking to people. Okay, you're studying communications. Well, you've identified that. You want to be the guy who talks to the customers, who interacts, who is the social butterfly of our organization. We're in an IT field. We could use somebody like you, mm-hmm. and you can gain valuable experience. That's not in the classroom, it's on the job, and it's real world experience. And if you hadn't considered that, if you just come in 9 to 5 every day and think, well, my job is just hanging TVs, this is my lot in life, you're missing out.
Yes, and those takes a lot of self-disclosure, takes a lot of desire to be vulnerable enough to share those things.
People tell me things, Bray.
Yeah, you have to. I think it's an honor when somebody decides to open up and share those types of thoughts and notions and feelings. And I definitely applaud them for doing that if they're ever talking to me. And I let them know, you know what? I don't know everything. And I'm going to be wrong sometimes. And you can take what I'm saying or leave it.
Yeah. I was wrong that one time when I was
back in 1997
when I was throwing papers.
but
since
it holds a little bit of value or most people would, I don't even know, maybe not so much anymore, but usually if somebody is a little bit older than you, you can assume they've had more life experience and potentially have walked the road that you have before and hopefully have something valuable to offer. And I just try to be genuine and authentic and provide them things that are going to help and be useful. Doesn't always work for them. Some people aren't willing to employ the advice.
Do you ever get people coming back to you and saying, "Dude, your advice was crap"?
I have not.
Because you're awesome. Yeah, okay. They're just curious.
No. Well, in most cases, I treat I am psych.
Hey.
So I treat the interactions more or less like a therapy session, and I try to leave them to their own conclusions so that I cannot be blamed for the things that they thought of because I allowed them the opportunity and space to come up with their own ideas.
You're a modern day Confucius. It's amazing.
So all of these people that are dissatisfied, or even some of them that are not, they're leaving their positions, and now what? Now it goes right back around to where we started this whole series.
Because you gotta get a new job.
You have to
start over.
You start all over. I'm curious, and maybe we can get into this a little bit more. I'm sure that we will, with more on the coworkers, the people at your job, not so much the supervisors or the owners or the management team or it could include some of those people, although I would say it usually doesn't. But the relationships that you were cultivating at that time with your colleagues, how many of those turn into something else? How many of those turn into actual friendships outside of the job, outside of that setting? Do those relationships last? Do people still contact previous colleagues, previous coworkers? Do people, I would imagine that some of those relationships have ended in marriage or some sort of other domestic partnership as well. That the potential for that can happen.
Ask me that exact question next episode, and I will tell you exactly what's really going on.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm out, but
I'm out. I'm about to be. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.
unless you're listening to this on audio, and then we won't see you, or you won't see us. We never see anybody.
See our voices.
Yeah.
See our beautiful voices.
Watch the waveform.
Sound waves are beautiful.
Especially when it's coming from your dulcet tones.